The last 2 weeks, most members of the Senate were back in their states, talking, I hope listening more than talking, and learning more than perhaps talking, learning about issues and problems in what they were seeing and hearing in their state. I was in Ohio from Ashtabula to Parma to Zanesville to meet with Ohioans and discuss ways to get our economy back on track. Too many Ohioans are struggling, as too many people in Pennsylvania are struggling. Many are still looking for work. Others have seen their wages cut or their hours reduced. But there are, from Chillicothe to Toledo, from Portsmouth to Mansfield, there are signs of recovery as our manufacturers, especially auto suppliers, but much more than that, and some of the small businesses supplying these companies are beginning to show real signs of growth. Few places are more symbolic of this than a company called American Manufacturing. The name of the company is American Manufacturing, located in Toledo. 3 years ago, the auto industry, as we know, was on the verge of collapse, threatening to take down with it thousands of auto parts suppliers. American Manufacturing got down to 4 employees. They had been 125. They supply container crates, metal container crates for the auto industry. Once been 125 down to 4 employees. President Bush tried, but was blocked mostly by Republicans in the United States Senate, his own party members, to do a bridge loan and assistance for the auto industry. President Obama, with a strong Democratic majority, over the opposition of many, many Republicans, although some Republicans in my part of the country, the industrial areas around Ohio, including Ohio, were supportive, were able to rescue this industry. We knew that rescuing the auto industry was way more than about helping Chrysler and General Motors. We knew that it mattered for not just those large companies and their workers. It mattered for Johnson Controls. It mattered for Magnum. It mattered for small companies like American Manufacturing in Toledo, companies that depended on the auto industry. In fact, Mr. President, estimates are that 800,000 people in Ohio are in the auto industry one way or the other, directly or indirectly work for auto companies. These 800,000 plus jobs were dependent on Congress moving forward in early 2009 in doing the right thing. The decision wasn't popular. There were all kinds of naysayers. There's no question now that it was a success. A number of people, from Governor Romney to lots of people around the country, lots of conservative politicians in Washington, said, let the companies go into bankruptcy. We can structure it, but let them go into bankruptcy, and then put the financing together to come out of bankruptcy. The only problem is nobody from Bain Capital to First National Bank would be willing to loan money to these 2 behemoths, Chrysler and GM, that were in such terrible situations and such terrible problems. But you know what? The government loaned the money. Much of that money's paid back, and things are better. But let's not forget that in January 2009, when President Obama took office, we were losing 800,000 jobs a month. Our economy was in free fall. This is the time the auto industry was going down. To stop the bleeding, one of the things we did was unlock the frozen credit market for small businesses and manufacturers through the Small Business Administration. Through these SBA loans, we saw a local bank in Toledo, Ohio, a new bank, a bank that had only been around for a handful of years, step up, invest capital in American Manufacturing, in this company in Toledo. And this company now just is about to hire its 100th person. This company is successful now because of the auto rescue, and it's successful because of the Small Business Administration coming out of the Recovery Act, having enough money to guarantee loans with this local community bank, not a Wall Street bank, but a local community bank, to get this company on its feet. Now we're seeing, Mr. President, even with all of this, with the auto rescue working, and we know 2 terrific examples of how it's working in my state. The Chevy Cruze, made in Youngstown, Ohio, assembled in Youngstown, Ohio. My 28-year-old daughter drives a Chevy Cruze. The Chevy Cruze would probably not exist today if it weren't for the auto rescue. And here's what it means to Ohio. The engine is made in Defiance, Ohio. The bumper is made in Northwood, Ohio. The transmission's made in Toledo, Ohio. The sound system's made in Springboro, Ohio. The steel comes out of Butler County, Ohio, Middletown, Ohio. The aluminum comes out of Cleveland. The stamping's done in Parma, and the assembly is done in Lordstown, Ohio. Look at the Jeep Wrangler. The Jeep Wrangler was made in Toledo prior to the auto rescue, was assembled in Toledo. But only 50% of the parts for the Jeep Wrangler were made in the United States. Today, the Wrangler, with more people working there, producing more cars, are still assembled in Ohio, yet 75 in Toledo, yet 75% of the parts, not 50% what it was, 75% of those parts now come from companies in Ohio, or companies in the United States, made by workers in the United States. But we're now seeing, though, Mr. President, in addition, but as the auto industry begins to grow, and the auto rescue was so clearly the right thing to do, then thank God this Senate didn't listen and the House didn't listen to the naysayers. In spite of that, we're still seeing huge trade deficits with China in auto parts. 10 years ago, our trade deficit with China in auto parts was about $1 billion. That meant about $1 billion more. We bought about $1 million more car parts from China than we sold to China. That was back 10 years ago. Today, that number's grown to almost $10 billion. George Bush, the first George Bush, President Bush, said that $1 billion trade deficit, meaning you buy $1 billion more than you sell to another country, $1 billion trade deficit translating into about 13,000 jobs. Well, today, do the math. Today, the trade deficit, the bilateral trade deficit between the United States and China on auto parts alone is $10 billion. And we're seeing it in other things. We see it in auto, we see it in solar. We see that China uses unfair subsidies. They subsidize water, they subsidize energy, they subsidize land, they subsidize credit, and on top of that, they have a currency advantage because of their manipulating of the currency. Sitting idly by is not an option. My colleagues on both sides of the aisle understand that. That's why my China currency manipulation bill, the biggest bipartisan bill to pass the Senate in 2011 by more than 70 votes, costing taxpayers nothing but leveling the playing field so China can't manipulate its currency and cheat in international trade. That legislation passed, as I said, with 70 votes. A recently released report shows that if this Congress, meaning the House of Representatives down the hall, if they would pass this and send it to the president's desk and the president would sign it, that by addressing China currency manipulation, it could support the creation of 2.2 million American jobs without adding a dime to the deficit. In fact, it would be the opposite. If you take 2 million people who are now unemployed and put them in jobs of $15 and $20 and $25 an hour, manufacturing jobs, you clearly would see you'd clearly see the deficit shrink. More people would be back on the payroll, paying taxes to and contributing their community. It's time to take bold action. It's time to stand up on China currency. I appreciate the support of my colleagues in the Senate on the China currency bill. Time is running out in the House. I'm hopeful that the House of Representatives passes this bill too. It's time we put American workers and American manufacturing companies first.